Well, I haven't had any luck with a 160 motor so far, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a look at the one on the 160 in the machine. So before I do that, I will just show you a few things about how to get the motor out and a few hints and tips on the Model 160. Oh, by the way, on a different note, you can tell I'm a real scrimper. You see this jumper I'm wearing? Well, my daughter spotted it in one of my videos and she said, do you know what she said? You were wearing that 40 years ago. I've seen a picture of you in it. I looked up in some of my old holiday snaps and sure enough there's a picture of me wearing this very jumper and I bought it over 40 years ago. It shows what a true scrimper I am. Even the sleeve has been patched. I persuaded the wife to put a patch on there. She didn't like doing it much, mind. She told me to put it in the rag bin, but I do quite like this old jumper. So there you go, that's a true scrimper, folks. Anyway, back to the 160. Now, to get the hood off the 160, the first thing you've got to do is lift this piece up here off the hood, and then you'll find underneath a screw. Take that screw out and then you should be able to lift the hood right off like so. Okay, so that's the hood off, and now you can see the motor in all its glory and the handle socket. Now to get the motor out, the easiest thing to do really, you've got to take the handle socket off to get one of the screws down the back, and there are also another 5 screws. There's one under the front there, under the lens, under the lamp shield rather, and there's 2 more round each side and one at the back. Now if, like me, if you've had these things stored in a shed for many years, you'll probably find that the screws won't come out. I've actually loosened these, but I'm just going to show you a few tips how to get the screws out if you really do have a problem. The first thing to do is be very careful when you start. Don't chew the tops of the slot up, because otherwise you'll never get them out. So don't go straight in with a small screwdriver and try and force them out, because you'll damage the slot and then it'll be difficult and you'll have to grind them off and you'll have a lot of problems. So the first thing is to do is to get a decent screwdriver like this one, at least, with a nice wide blade and a decent end on it so it'll fit in nicely, and then put a bit of pressure on it like that before you turn it. Now one tip is, if before you do that, if they are tight, get a decent screwdriver. I use one like this, which is a good hard wearing thing, and a small hammer, and pop it in the slot, and then with a small hammer, tap it a few times like this, because that will tend to jar those threads loose. It doesn't always work, but it doesn't do any harm anyway. Just go around them all first and do that. Once you've done that, you should be able to get them out. I found by using this huge Spiralux screwdriver, I could actually put some pressure on and get them out like that. So I was lucky and I did manage to get them out. Another way is to use one of these things. This is an impact driver. They're cheap enough to buy, and all you do, you simply pop it onto the screw in question and then get the hammer and give it a good few sharp clouts, and that will often force a difficult screw out. If all else fails, you might have to actually file or grind the top off and force it out that way. Before you remove the motor, you need to take this off the handle mechanism, and the easiest way to do it, undo this bolt here that goes through the handle socket. You undo these 2 screws, take that off, watch you don't lose the screws. Now that should pull away. Now be very careful with this piece. You don't have to remove that to take the motor out, and my advice is to leave well enough alone. Don't try taking it out. They're very delicate, these, and they break. If you want to see what they look like, this is what it looks like. And it's got a linkage. What happens is this fits on like so, and the linkage goes underneath the machine and is linked to this lever here to lower the handle. But if you can undo the screws, but to take that completely off, you have to take a little pin out in here, and it's a bit of a fiddle, so my advice is leave that on there unless it's broken. These are very prone to breaking. We had loads of these broke, so be careful you don't break it, otherwise you'll be stuck. It's a common thing. The other thing that happens is that piece wears away on the handle socket, or the pit breaks off, and then again the handle just flops down. So having got that off, turn that round, you can now lift the whole motor out complete with the handle socket, and just pull that out of the handle socket like so, and you'll see this one's got 2 pins on because it's a 2-wire machine or a single speed one, whereas this one here has got 3 pins on it because that's a 3-wire machine. A lot of them were converted to 2-wire eventually, so but that one is a 2-speed one. You've got to be careful to get the right one for the neutral. It's not the black one, that's the neutral, the yellow one, and the other 2 colours are for the 2 field windings for the different speeds, but I'll show you that in a bit. As you can see, the brushes are very badly burnt on the one corner, and that indicates to me that that armature's had it. I've checked the other brush and it's exactly the same. Right, I'm going to connect the test meter leads up to the 2 wires. I'm not going to do anything, so I'm just going to wrap them round actually, and then put a crop clip over them, just hold them in place just to make sure. Now watch what happens when I turn the fan around. I'm turning the armature. Look at the needle. You see nothing, something. You see what that means is that actually there's some of the windings in the armature are faulty. They're open circuit. There's no continuity. There's continuity there, but there is no continuity when I turn it round. It's not the brushes. I've checked both the brushes. They are worn, burnt on one edge, but that wouldn't stop it having continuity. What's happened is there are open circuit windings, so that armature has actually had it, which is a sad thing really, because basically I've got 3 160 armatures here, and every single one's faulty, as I suspected. And I don't think I've got another one. I may have one lurking in the shed, but I'm pretty sure I haven't, because I know they were an armature that always seemed to give us problems, and I think that's the reason we ran out of stock of them. We couldn't get any more. Hoover made them obsolete, which is quite understandable considering the age of the machine, isn't it? Now this is the motor that we took apart earlier, and what I'm going to do, I put this one together again, and it's faulty, as I suspected, but I am going to put it in the vise to hold it firmly, and I'm going to connect it up, and I can show you what it sounds like, a bad motor. Don't try this at home folks, because it's very dangerous. I'm doing it because I've been doing it for many years, and I do know what I'm doing, but do not try it at home. I don't want to anybody to electrocute themselves. Right, we're connected up, and I'm going to turn it on, and you'll hear what the motor sounds like. Yeah, look, it's not even go at all. Now it's going, but it's not fast enough. It's far too slow, it's not running properly, and you can actually see arcing. Right down in the motor there, and the bottom, you can see sparking. That's nowhere near fast enough, so that has had it. This is on the other field winding. There you go. That sounds pretty horrible. So there you go, there you have it. 3 160 motors, and every single one of them's got a faulty armature, and that's a shame really, because it leaves me with a problem. What it means is I've got an old 160 cleaner that I was intending to recondition, but I'm not sure whether it's worth it now, to be honest. I've either got the choice of tarting it up, spraying the body and everything and polishing it all up, and just use it as a showpiece and not actually have it working, which I don't really like doing. Or I can just leave it back in the shed and forget about it basically, because without an armature I'm never going to get it working again, and I don't suppose you'll be able to get an armature anywhere. It's most unlikely anyway. Most 160s have probably been thrown away. I can smell this motor burning now. You can smell it inside. I only showed it running because some people might not realise what it actually sounds like when it's faulty, so I just did it for that. Now there was one other thing I was going to show you. Well, I've forgotten what it was now. I've shown you the motor. I've talked about my jumper. I'm sure there was something else I had to talk about, but I'm blowed if I can remember what it was. Oh yeah. I'm not going to, obviously as I'm not going to recondition the thing now, I'm not going to go through all the work involved with the motor, because there's not much point. I will show you a couple of little pointers when you're putting it back together, and obviously if you've got one, take it all apart and clean it up and everything, if you know what you're doing. If you need to grease the bottom bearing, which is a ball bearing, you've got 2 options. The correct way is to use a proper Hoover grease gun, but I doubt many people have these. They're only issued to Hoover dealers originally. They do come up on eBay from time to time. It's the only real way you can grease a Hoover bearing that's encapsulated. if you look closely, there are 4 little tiny holes around there, and what it does, the bearing is mounted with some felt seals either side, and you pop that in there and put a lot of pressure on like so, and it forces the grease through past the seals into the ball bearing itself. You can do it from both sides. Normally what you do it and then you watch to see the grease appear at the other end. When the grease comes out, you know the grease has got into the actual bearing, so that's what you do. Now with the 160, if you are desperate and you want to change that bearing, or if you want to grease it and you haven't got a grease gun, there's no other way you can do it, what you can do if you want is drill out these 4 rivets, and it will come apart and you'll be able to take the ball bearing out itself, but then you've got to sort of pop rivet it back in. So I'm sorry I can't do much more on this video. It's not going to be very comprehensive because I haven't got the interest in doing it, to be honest. Now I've found that I haven't got an armature and the motors have had it, I haven't got any sort of impetus to make me do the video now, so I'm sorry about that. So I think I'm going to have to end this video here, which is a bit of a shame, but there you go. I have covered a few hints and tips. One thing I should show you, the differences. One thing I do like about these old motors, this is the old 800 series type motor. What I do like is, notice the armature in this one, you can actually get to it and see it, so that when you've got it working you can see the commutation and everything. I mean, it's a superb motor, that is. But overall you can actually use what we call a com stick on this one to bed the brushes in. Now these here are what we call com sticks, folks. And what you do, when the motor's run, obviously you can't do it on the bench like this unless you've got that held somehow. When it's in the machine, you turn the machine on. You've got to be very, very careful. I wouldn't recommend people to try this unless you know what you're doing. When the machine is running, you hold the stick against the side of the case like that and hold it against the commutator as it's going round, and what it does, the sort of grit in the stick actually helps to bed the brushes in and you get much better commutation. In fact, this motor, when I first repaired it and got it going again, it was sparking like mad, and I thought, oh, I've had it. But by using the com stick on there like that, it cleaned it up beautifully, and it sounds fine now. But of course, on a 160 and later motors, you can't get a com stick in there. It's physically impossible. So you can't do it on that, but it's a shame that. So those are com sticks, folks, in case you haven't seen one before. Well, I think that's about it for now, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and see you again in the next video. Bye for now. If you want to, you can actually test an armature with a multimeter to check where the windings are open circuit. If you notice, when I touch those two there, adjacent ones, you get a reading, continuity, and each one you touch, you get continuity. When you get round to here, where the one is worn I showed you earlier, there's continuity there. When you get to the next one, look, it's dead. Round here, this is where the wire has come away from the commutator because it's overheated and it's dead, and the next ones are dead as well. There's no circuit through there, so that's one way of testing it, is to go around all the segments if you've got the time and you want to bother about it, and make sure they're connected. But where the wire is broken away there, obviously there's no connection, it breaks the circuit, so you've got dead segments on there, which means it won't work properly. Occasionally you can get one segment that doesn't work and the thing will still turn round, as long as it doesn't stop on that segment. Once it's going, it will actually keep going. Sometimes, not always, and if you give it a twirl, away it'll go. And that could be just one of the segments causing problems on the commutator.